What's up, y'all?
Hi, hi.
That's my intro. Welcome
That's why
back.
I usually do the intro.
Yeah, it is. We got Superman, phenomenal, extraordinaire Ryan Hodge here with us today. Me and Ryan used to work together, and Ryan's a good guy, so I was like, I'm gonna get you on, Mr. Good Guy.
Can we call you that, Mr. Good Guy?
Sure. I've been called worse.
Yeah. Strength and conditioning coach, manual therapist, healer, lover, Mobot representative. Yeah, what's up?
Hey, man.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Hey.
Sorry, we got the headsets working, as you can see.
Woohoo. It was actually wasn't it this guy?
It was
This
that
little
guy,
black box guy? It was our black box.
a little micro amp.
It
that-
didn't have enough attention, so it needed some more attention.
Yeah, and right as we
understand
were
you,
gonna
buddy.
start, my tea spilled everywhere.
Hot. But like
Hot.
just poured into the cup tea.
I caught it, and then I dropped it.
You caught it? I missed that.
I didn't see the catch.
I caught it, and then it was hot, and so I dropped it.
So that's not a catch.
Technically, it was.
Okay.
But
So he's drinking water.
yeah, so it is what it is. But we made it. We're here. Headsets are working. Technology is good. We got a tripod for the camera.
hmm
Good job.
We don't have painter's tape connecting the camera to the
Oh, you
tripod.
should have seen it. The last episode, it was a mess.
We had each different leg of the tripod was balancing on a different height book.
Yeah. We borrowed a tripod from her neighbor,
Yeah.
and it was a camera tripod, and
Mhm.
so we like taped
Like an old big one.
You're right.
the phone to the.
It looked like this.
We call that Jimmy rigging in my family.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a Jimmy relative who takes offense to that?
I don't believe so.
Uh-huh.
My uncle Jimmy, I
Usually
haven't heard
it's
anything.
Uncle Jimmy. Usually I've heard of it as jerry rigging,
That's another one.
but maybe you have a Jerry and that's why they changed the name to Jimmy.
Potentially.
Woe rigging,
Well rigging.
way of healing. Rigging.
I'm eating some sunflower kernels and golden raisins. Forgive me. I hope it's not rude.
Yeah, yeah. As long as we don't hear the crunch.
I was going to say that'd be awesome if I could, right? The whole time.
What's it? The ASMR?
Oh, we're going there. Huh?
ASMR.
Go
Have you heard
ahead.
about those where they like eat food
Somebody told me to do
and then
that.
they make like they emphasize all the crunching and
Uh-huh.
and people
Pay to listen to people chewing.
they're into that thing. It's,
How much? I want to know
I
how
mean,
much I
there's-
can
there's
make is the
people
first
on
thing.
YouTube making a bunch of money.
It's
like,
not
with
only
millions of
just
views.
chewing, it's like breathing. It's any movement that
Or, yeah, like crushing stuff.
it's just the sound. It's
It's
that
like the new voiceover,
yeah, it totally. It's,
like voice
maybe.
characters in the form of sounds of crunching.
What voice characters,
She-
guys?
Oh no!
she did
Oh,
voiceovers.
no.
See, you could be it. Like that's your career.
Uh-huh.
whoa. One thing at a time. This is my career. That's what
It's
we're
a
trying
hobby.
to
It's
establish.
a hobby.
This is a hobby?
No,
The ASMR?
Yes,
Yeah.
that can be a
Yeah.
good hobby for
Okay, guys.
you, right?
Yeah.
You're natural.
My name's Pashmina.
We've had Pesh on the show before.
One other time Pash showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome, Ryan. Thank you for coming on the
Thank
show,
you.
bud.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
listeners. We made it
as-
through.
Yeah, we did it. As healers, it's self-care is a thing that we struggle with. And I mean, not even as healers, as people, as humans, a lot of people struggle with self-care and they don't know where to go with it. They don't know what to do. They overcomplicate it. And that's why I wanted to bring Ryan on the show. I've worked with Ryan. I've seen Ryan take someone from not walking to walking. I've seen him
Thanks.
take people from not being able to squat to like squatting weight and jumping around and stuff. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk shop about your approach and your experience and your insight, because you are also a manual therapist, as I am, as Casey does as well. And I am a firm believer that movement and self-care outside of a manual therapy session is much more important than the actual session itself.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do. Some people don't like hearing that, but I do.
It's a, as healers, especially with like the whole ego thing where it's like,
Mhm.
I'm a healer, I fix people.
That.
Right. Right. And
Nah.
Nah, exactly. That's why I'm actually a little bit like tentative to say the word healer, even though it's like it's still definitely true.
Mhm.
But it's like I try to put it more of the perspective of like catalyst for change and catalyst for
Oh, I
healing,
like
and
that.
right.
I do like that. And I know what you mean because I was like that for a long time. And at the same time, as a healer, I had to really embrace that part of me. Like, this
Yeah.
is what I do. I help
Truth.
hold space for people to heal. And for a long time, it was like, I'm not a healer because I'm just holding space.
Mm,
But
Healing has this stigma, or it
yeah.
can.
it
It
does.
has this association with like not real.
Mhm.
Woo woo. You
Mhm.
whoa, he gave me the woo woo fingers. I felt that. That pierced my heart
Yeah.
chakra.
Oh no.
Yeah, healing is one of those words. And then, for people not in the industry too, it's like, I'm well. I don't need to be healed,
Mhm,
right? There's
mhm.
a stigma of like there being something wrong or there's shame or there's Tracy, who you all know from the podcast, was talking the other night about she hesitates to use the word healing and she prefers wellness,
Mm.
um, much because of the population of, like we're working in a hospital setting
Right.
or where actually healing is preeminent. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, interesting. But different places,
Yeah.
different people, different populations think of healing differently.
Mhm.
It's kind of like as a healer, you are opening the door in somebody's house.
Mhm.
And then they have to go in and explore. Otherwise, their process of exploration takes so much longer
Right.
because they're waiting to do the work until every time they meet with you. Right. So
Mm.
you open the door, and then the next time you see them, they're still waiting at the threshold of the door. And you're like, okay, let's actually go through the door.
Right.
Here's a chair. Here's a painting. So yeah, encouraging clients to do simple things.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you have, that you have in your toolbox that you think are important and valuable for clients to do outside of sessions with you?
Yeah. Great question. So there's a whole number of tools, and I think everybody's going to use a different combination of them. But just to kind of holistically be more global about it, getting people to start understanding the value of sleep and sleeping well.
Mhm.
So there's tools in that arena alone, right? The tools that can help people start to feel like their bodies are moving better every day, whether that be a movement practice like a yoga or some other kind of movement practice that's interesting to people. Foam rolling or other kinds of manual therapy. There's so many tools just in the moving physically better category. Then there's going to be the tools in feeling internally better. So like gut wealth, brain brain health and wellness, tools in that category. And then the emotional, spiritual, energetic, physical side of things, which is also very taboo in the healing slash medical world. I'm sure
Mhm.
Casey knows a lot about
Are
that.
those knowing eyes that I'm
Yeah,
nodding?
right. And then there's tools. So there's tools in those. What was that? 5 main camps, right? There's 3 or 4 or 5 main camps I just talked about. So there's
Mm.
tools in all those. And so when I see somebody for the first time, I really want to get to know that person and see, well, how many of those categories have you really delved into? And I'm sure you guys would probably agree that most people haven't gone too far in many of them.
Yeah.
So we gotta, as people who teach and guide, have to figure out where's the best inception point, and then take them through, take them into the house. I like that analogy a lot,
Mhm.
Casey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because we see people and they want something. They expect something. They
Mhm.
come
It's a service.
it's a
Mhm.
service and they come to you with an expectation of something's wrong. I need you to fix me.
Yep. Yesterday.
Yeah. Cuz
It's like an urgency to it
yeah,
too.
I
Uh-huh.
need to
Like
keep
now.
going. I need to do what I need to do. And a lot of times that's not happening, right? Because there's so much more to the healing of themselves and their body and their wellness,
Right.
that 1 hour and a half on a table isn't gonna, it'll change stuff. It'll
Yeah.
move stuff. It'll get stuff going.
Yeah.
But like you said, are you sleeping well? Are you doing stuff to clear your mind? Are you learning how to handle your stress?
Yes.
Are you okay thinking it's okay to not poop every day?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
the basic, some of the most basic things. Can I speak to the yesterday piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of what I'm finding is that people wait so long to come
Yes.
for treatment or
Right.
exploration or release. And this idea that body work is a luxury has to end.
Yeah.
It is a maintenance tool. It is a health and vitality tool, just as important as washing your armpits or brushing your teeth or drinking enough water. You have to be, we have to be touched. It has to be safe and consensual, not sexual, right? But we have needs as mammals, right? We have needs. And so people wait so long to come get treatment, which is why there's this sense of urgency of like, I've been feeling horrible for this long, this long, this long, this long. And then, my God, fix me. I can't deal with this anymore. As opposed to the like, I'm getting this for maintenance work before my engine light goes on,
Yeah.
right? Or before I don't pass my smog test, right? If we think of our cars as our bodies as cars.
Yeah.
Cars and houses.
Yeah.
That's good.
Cars and houses, people. People, cars, and houses. That's what it's about today.
There's an irony in what you just said too, because I definitely see and work with the people who are coming with this attitude of it's a service to help with this urgent problem. And then the catch 22 is that we as the healer, therapist, coach, guide, we have to really play around with how we talk to these people, because in one side of the spectrum, we know for sure we can make a big change in an hour. It could happen. There's no way of guaranteeing that.
Right.
And so to tell somebody like, hey, now that you all of a sudden you've taken this big step to actually go and see somebody for your change, but I can't guarantee you that anything good is going to come about it, like that can be a very hard tackle for that person that you're helping to come through.
Yeah.
So there's this really interesting dance with every single person that we work with and see that we have to constantly recheck and reanalyze to know where am I going to best help serve this person? What's the next best action step to take them from where they are to where they want to be? And that might not always be pushing on somebody.
Yeah.
It might just be listening to somebody. It might just be having them like go move around on the floor and get some stuff out. Like there can be different ways to help.
Yeah.
I like what I'm hearing here. I'm so happy that you're a male energy in the field doing this kind of work.
Thank you.
Right? I
Yeah.
think that a big piece of male energy can be a performative aspect, or holding it in, or a not sharing emotions, or staying tough, and it's like you representing the male form saying, no, please go roll on the floor and kick and scream, or whatever it is, cry,
Yeah,
cry,
that's happened to me before.
be a grump, like be super happy, whatever it is. But that expressive nature, that needing to move the energy out.
Yeah.
We have a teacher who says better out than in.
For sure.
And that's something that I often come back to. It's like, yeah, it's not always going to be the positive emotions. There's going to be the whole spectrum of things. So where are you doing this work? Is this something, are you going to people's homes? Do you work out of a space?
Both right now at this moment in time, both. Primarily, I was telling OJ earlier, I will go to a couple of my main clientele's homes. They have enough space at their homes for me to do some manual work and or physical training, physical preparation. And it's also really nice to have that situation, because I can firsthand see their kitchens, I can firsthand see their bedrooms, I can firsthand see their environments that they're living in, which for the executive clientele that I'm seeing in that regard is a game changer for them, because most people that they see in a medical setting aren't going to go to their house and be like, you have this massive TV right over your bedroom, like, how are you watching TV right before bed? Oh yeah, right before I go to bed. Oh well, no wonder you're not sleeping very well. Like no one wants to do the little dirty details like that. So that's one aspect of it. And then there's a facility in Santa Monica called 34 North that I rent from, and I know the owners there, so I use their facility for other private clientele that I can't go and travel to. It's a little of both.
Nice. Do you know 34 North? Yeah.
Yeah. Right down the street.
Yeah. It's on Lincoln. It's like a functional, I say like quote unquote functional gym, because it's not as reliant on machine style training, whereas it is more like understanding how your body moves. There's sleds, there's rings. It's a nice hybrid of physical training. So the way that I hybrid helping people get from where they are to where they want to be, I like finding places that are hybriding other things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about getting worse before getting better? Because we've both seen that countless times, and
Yeah.
a lot of times when there's tons and tons and tons of stuff built up, sometimes body work or energy work or movement can be the catalyst to just open the floodgates.
Unleash it, right?
Yeah.
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 Healing
And
crisis.
and then when
they
that
call it.
happens, it's like everything shuts down, and sometimes people can get to into a space where like you hurt me, or you you're not the right person for me, or whatever excuses. But what's been your
Yeah. That's a
experience?
loaded
Yeah, I
question. First, well,
know.
let me see if I can chew on this. One aspect when you first said that was like, I don't know why, but I went to a space of when I hear about those people that go through those particular scenarios where they go and see somebody and they feel like that quote unquote hurt them. That's where I'm immediately like, well, I want to understand whether or not like that's really the case. Like there are practitioners that don't really have a grasp on what exactly they're doing, or they're not exactly sure on how to do something properly. And so there are people that are getting hurt, unfortunately, from that regard. But then
Right.
there is also the other situation, whereas you just saw somebody for the first time, you finally talked about things that haven't come up in years, you finally got things moving that haven't moved in years, and then all of a sudden you didn't sleep at all that night, and you're anxious and crying, and maybe there's physical pain associated to that. So in the times where I've talked to people in that space, I guess all I can say is every single person's on their journey, and because of that, you can't stop unless you're like dead. So as weird as it sounds, it's like those people that have fallen back, it's like, well, unless you're going to die, which I don't think you're going to die, like you got to keep moving forward. And
Mhm.
so whether you decide to go and see another therapist or healer, or whether you decide to go a different direction, that's your journey of getting better. And so you had to go through that process in order to get better, sadly. That's not everyone's case. I hope it's not your case who's listening to this, but that happens. And
Mhm.
then there's other people in different realms that can pick up where somebody left off and take them through the door, as Casey was talking about earlier. So that's, I mean, I try my best to be as objective and guiding and cautious as possible when I'm working with somebody, but at the same time very transparent with, this is what could happen. This is what you might expect. Please reach out to me right away if these things are happening, so that I can at least help guide you in a direction that's going to be more pleasant. But you never know. It's
Yeah.
uh, chaos theory is the human being. So
Mhm.
one little thing can make a big difference, and we just don't know when that one thing is going to happen all the time.
Yeah. Especially when they're coming to you from a place of desperation
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
It's like, all this is going on. I need
Right.
help.
Right. It means that like the storm, the floodgates, yeah, that like the dam, the levee is gonna break,
The
right?
straw that broke the camel's back.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Right. It's not that you leaned down into the refrigerator to get the orange juice out and that's what hurt your back.
No.
Right.
Right.
No.
It's how many years of repressed emotion are you
Right.
carrying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just shitty movement
Right.
patterns.
Or I usually find both.
Yeah.
Like they're usually one and the same, or related in some way. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I like what you do in terms of like rehabbing movement,
Thank you.
and like getting someone to progress from like easier movements to more complicated movements,
Right.
and in terms of getting their body to a place where they're comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of being in a good place has to do with balancing out the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. And when one of these things is off, or you don't feel comfortable in one, then it definitely can affect the other ones.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've seen some crazy stuff in
Mm.
my practice, along with previous practices that we've been involved in, or ones before that, where everything from emotional ties and or organ dysfunctions and or emotional traumas from past lives have all been somewhat connected to a physically expressed pain, or a physically expressed inability to move.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say like properly, because there's not really a proper way to move, but there's different ways to move, right? But I've seen all those things tied in together, and it's crazy when you find one of those things. But that's the beauty of this industry that we're in, is it's a new canvas in front of you every day. And
Yeah.
the person that you saw yesterday is also going to be different than that same person, the next time you see them.
Yeah.
So learn how to paint.
Yeah. And I appreciate your take on it too, because a lot of trainers are just seeing the physical, right? Physically, you're not able to move this way. So
Right.
physically, let me try to force you to move this way. When like when you take a step back, there's so much more to the human body and the
Yes.
human energy system that you got to look at all of it.
I heard the funniest quote. I forget what podcast it was, but I'm listening to a podcast and this guy's talking about holistic health. And he's saying, you go and see this doctor and they tell you that you're having digestive issues because you have a gluten sensitivity. So you take gluten out of your diet, but your symptoms don't get any better. And so the doctor goes, you got to be more gluten free. Like, go through all of your house, take anything that has a trace of gluten in it. Anytime you go to a restaurant, so their answer to the problem is just go harder on it. And I think so many people in the health and fitness industry are that's their number one mindset is, oh, you can't squat, you have a hip issue, so let's strengthen the crap out of something. Or on the flip side, let's just release the crap out of something. Oh, and that didn't work? Well, then let's find a different area to release or a different thing to strengthen and just keep pushing that one perspective. And so the moment you go, oh, there's a whole nother arena that thing could be tied into, then you all of a sudden might make a huge change in the person just off this one small tweak. And in my experience and working with some of the best practitioners, coaches, therapists, the ones that are really great don't spend too much time on the things that don't work. And what's going to work from each person, like we just said, is different day to day.
In terms of when someone comes to you, and you were talking earlier off camera and I had to stop you.
Yeah.
Where you were mentioning you give them what they need. Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you? And also, when you start tapping into the other things besides the physical, like the energetic, I know Katie does Reiki, but have you gotten certified in Reiki or?
I haven't done like level 1 or level 2 Reiki certification. And part of the reason is because I know enough Reiki practitioners where I'd rather just refer them to do just Reiki rather than try to put Reiki into my already very hybrided practice as it is.
Right.
Because at this point, the more little extra modalities I put in, the more I find that people are just like, well, why? Why put in 15 things into this one session when I only need 3 of those 15 things? And so that's, again, getting back to what the person needs. And on top of that, I had a Reiki master who I was working with. I was doing some physical work on this particular person, and he looked at me and goes, are you Reiki certified? And I was like, no. He's like, well, you're giving Reiki whether you like it or not. And that to me was him saying well, we're all energetic beings. So whether I want to put the Reiki title on it or not, I don't feel the need to do that at this time. But it's a great modality that my girlfriend uses, other practitioners use great. I will refer that out after I've had a client who is full-blown showing emotional traumas and they're not open to seeing any kind of counselor or psychotherapist that might use other types of cool tricks. And that might not be my first person to send them to, but something in that realm, Reiki would be in that realm as well for helping that.
Yeah, and in my experience, it's hard too when a client is so used to seeing you for a certain thing, like for training, for them to come to you for something else, like
it's weird,
some energetic release.
It's people have asked me about would you ever do meditation coaching? And it's thought about that, thought about doing more of the, let's just talk for an hour and just, life coaching. But then at the same time, like you said, it's challenging for somebody to see you with those 2 different hats on. How can you be an expert in this physical training, movement, rehab world, and at the same time be an expert at helping people with meditation or mindset?
Right.
And so for that reason, I like to have people networked in my practice, but then at the same time, try to show people that you can learn a lot about all this stuff. And just because you're not a master at all these different things doesn't mean that you can't get somebody into the camp, show them the waters a little bit, show them the territory. And if they like it, send them to the master.
Yeah. It's all related, right?
It has to be.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm curious, and I don't know if you covered this off air, but do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into this kind of work? What led you here?
I can.
How'd you get to my place?
How much time do we
here?
have?
Time.
Yeah. So I got here in my car. Just kidding.
Shocking.
Right. So to help people understand that where I am right now. So if I'm going to start at A and get to B, B is strength coach, movement therapist, health and wellness coach. And to get here, I started way back in, I would say, end of middle school, where I was the more overweight, heavier kid in class and had been that way the majority of my childhood, and decided one summer that I'm going to start calorie counting. And that turned into an evolution of weight loss, physical change, started training at gyms when I was younger, got into sports. Sports led to injuries. Injuries led to training and rehab. That just got me into the whole world of coaching and, strength and conditioning. And by the time I got into college and I was playing water polo in college, I was working with the physical therapists, the athletic trainers, the strength and conditioning staff at my school, knew that that was the arena I wanted to be into. And as soon as I graduated, rather than going into a doctorate program, because no doctorate program quite gave me everything I wanted, I just knew I had to start working. So I was doing interning with Velocity Sports Performance, which was doing the NFL Combine at the time. So I was working with an elite NFL Combine group right out of college, working with high-end swimmers and sub 18-year-olds right out of college. Got into a private gym that had celebrities, Olympic athletes, professional athletes go and train there in off season. So at a young age, I was really fortunate to work with such a diverse population. And at that exact same time, because of my own physical issues, dealing with shoulder pain, back pain, I was going to different physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, getting treatment and working in their clinics to understand, well, what does an acupuncturist do for back pain? What does a physical therapist do for back pain? What's a chiropractor do for back pain? And crazy enough, all of those three main doctorate programs have their own little hybrids. Like one chiropractor does a lot of muscle testing. One chiropractor just manipulates the C1, C2 area. That's all they do. One chiropractor only does the axial skeleton, and one chiropractor does all joints. So going to these different chiropractic clinics just there was really cool to see how these things can intertwine. Same thing with physical therapy, same thing with acupuncture. My degree was in nutrition because Arizona didn't have a kinesiology program. So I'm learning about like holistic nutrition. And I fortunately, looking back, created a really interesting melting pot of academic literature and experience in the field to, over the course of the 5 or 6 years following that, got me into places like Human Garage, where I could like furthermore diverse in different practices and modalities. And as you know, I was doing my own stuff on the side there. So it's been an evolution of learning and working with people nonstop and figuring out how as many of these different systems that I can learn about work and intertwine together, and where you can pluck little changes into these systems to create better health, better wellness, better beings. Does that work?
That works.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Was this Arizona State, ASU?
No, I went to U of A.
You went to U of A?
Yes.
You're a Wildcat?
It's a
Bear down.
tattoo.
My dad's a Wildcat. See that man on the refrigerator
Right
there
there?
with the striped shirt? No, one below that. Yeah.
Bear down.
George Kim.
Woo!
Awesome.
That's
We're going to
awesome.
send a photo of that to
For
him
sure.
later.
Anyone that went to U of A sees they're like, yeah.
My parents are trying to move back to Tucson.
Are they?
As we speak.
Good for them.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't. I love it. Don't get me wrong.
Dang.
I don't know that I'm advocating for it. I actually today texted them, New Mexico has really low property taxes. They're under 1%, sons.
Right?
I have a best friend that just moved from New Mexico to Phoenix.
Oh wow. They're both cheaper than LA, that's for sure.
Everything is
I only said
cheaper.
not to Tucson just because I've lived there for 4 years. It was hot, and I've lived in Southern California, and just personally, I'm a Southern California environment kind of guy.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
you can go out to the park and move around any day of the
Any
year,
day.
pretty
I
much,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Almost any hour of any day.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to Arizona and it's
Yeah, you're hiding in
Good
the
luck.
shade for 6 months of the
Right.
year, and then you're cold at night in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, Dad, do you hear that? Are you listening?
I've had a phone mount melt in my car when
Yep.
I was visiting Phoenix.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Weird
intense.
things. It's hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what is your vision for your practice going forward?
I haven't thought about that in a minute.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Oj.
Yeah.
Because right now my practice is very diversified between teaching for Mobot, working with these executive clients that I have with this startup company, and then my private clients that I've kind of hand selected, which is nice. So if I had to give it like a 5-year timeline, I would say I'm probably still doing some of all of those three things. But
Mm-hmm.
my goal is that in a few years, the tech company that I'm working with is going to have their own bigger space that I can put a gym inside of, which will just give me more freedom to do workshops and teach and host things. And that my private clientele just slowly starts to build up so that we can start combining communities together and get, these ideas and concepts and strategies shared. So just kind of just evolving it into a little bit of a bigger hub.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like right now it's really fun because everything's just very new and I'm growing things. Like I've had a website for a few months now and I still have plenty of things to change with that. I know that my facility that I'm using right now is going to change in the next couple of years. So I'm kind of just trying to enjoy the ride for a bit and continue to manifest more evolution.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thanks.
We're into it.
Yeah.
You're saying?
Manifest evolution.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Right?
That's what we're
Mhm.
doing. We're woman and manifesting.
Yeah.
She likes the woman.
I'm on.
Well,
I'm on
you
board.
know, it's kind of a fun word to play with.
It is. What was the word I made up?
Oh, you made up a word?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be
That
the
makes
first
you
time.
what?
I don't know. I forgot what the word was. I don't even remember what the word was.
Write it
Okay,
down.
when it comes back.
Yeah.
It was a terrible word.
Like a bad word? Or like you
Just-
see what I did there?
it
Was it
was-
a bad word or was it just a
No.
terrible like
It was like cheesy, corny,
Okay.
typical like dad
What did
joke.
it
Dad
have
joke
to
word.
do with? Oh, it was a dad joke.
Yeah, it was one of
I
those.
bet Kai or Mar would remember. I bet Mar would remember.
She remembers a lot.
Yeah.
She probably remembers Ryan.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah. It
She
hasn't
just saw
been-
him last
You're
night.
so
No.
sweet.
Hasn't been that long.
Yeah, they're very, very sweet.
So, in terms of like when someone comes in and they haven't moved before, or someone who is struggling to start moving, like where would you recommend they start?
Nice. So just to be clear on the question, this is somebody who in some way, shape, or form pretty much what I would call a low training experience, meaning that they've never really done any kind of formal, like we could say yoga, Pilates, strength training, like they're just kind of new to it.
Yeah.
And they're now reaching out to me because they want to start this journey and they're looking for probably the most efficient way to get them into a healthy routine that's not going to hurt them. So that's my typical client. Actually, I take that back. That's like a third of my clientele. Most of my clientele are actually highly trained, highly experienced. So it's for them, it's like, how do I optimize everything I've been doing and or unlearn some of the bad habits and learn better habits? But sorry, for the unexperienced client, first thing I want to do is have a nice long chit chat and see, well, why are you doing what are you doing? Do you want to get healthy and fit because your mom just passed away and you're afraid that you're going to go down that same rabbit hole? Or are you getting healthy and fit because your friends are making fun of you for being the overweight one? Those are two very, very different reasons. And in one of those two categories, I could see one of those people going a lot longer down the journey than the other one, because in a fear-based mindset, when shit hits the fan, you get scared and it's not worth it because it's a fear-based thing most of the time, not all the time. And then when you have more of a, I'm doing this because I want to be the best version of myself. I'm not happy with where I've come in my life. I'm maybe comparing myself to people that I respect and I want to be more like these people that I respect. Those kinds of people tend to last a little bit longer when I'm working with them because they have more self-motivation, they have more self-awareness, and it's not just this reactive thing, it's a proactive thing. So I start with that. And a lot of people aren't open to those concepts. So as soon as I get that information from them, I don't even talk about that. I just go into, okay, well, what do you want to do? And if the response is something like, I want to lose weight or I want to feel better, then we're going to have a very long conversation because I'm very objective. The difference between losing 5 pounds, losing 20 pounds is very different to me. The difference between gaining 5 pounds of muscle and gaining 20 pounds of muscle is very different to me. The goal of being I want to just be able to run versus I want to be able to run, bike, swim, lift. Those are different programs. So all these different factors have to be processed and figured out. And then from there, it's like, all right, now let me actually put my hands on you, see you move, see how well you think you move versus what I expect you to be able to do. If you're telling me that you're going to do some kind of athletic event, you need to have certain mobility and flexibility prerequisites before we even start talking about strength training. So these kinds of things are all dealt with. And then I try to keep it in the majority of that camp for our first session, but then get them to understand that over time, if things aren't changing in the right direction or it's not moving as quickly as we'd expect, we need to start talking about other factors like sleep, nutrition, emotional health and wellness, stress, environment, relationships. Depends what the person's open to going into.
Yeah.
So typical starting day right there.
Can we delve into the fear thing you mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because unfortunately, a lot of people come to healers or to someone that they think is going to help them out of fear.
Yeah.
And someone once told me that when you make a decision out of fear, it's only going to result in another situation where fear is going to take hold.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many things I could say about that. The first thing that pops in my mind is just because I literally saw this book at my client's house the other day. There's a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, if you guys have heard of it. And one of the concepts that I really like from this book is this thing called upper limiting yourself, which basically means that you have this story that's running in your mind, and this subconscious story will take over your physical experience and present things that force you to stay at a level that you're at. And that usually happens in a fear-based mindset. Because I'm afraid, like, let's use the, just because I used it earlier, like somebody passed away in my life and I'm afraid that I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. You're going to manifest most likely some kind of thing, whether it's another family member having an issue or you have your own issue, that's going to set you off into a cascade of fear and questionable emotions that most people are just going to be stuck in and not be able to evolve and pass through. So you are asking about tools earlier, Casey. I feel like for so many millions of reasons, this is why meditation is a really good tool. Because for the person who is in a fear-based mindset, if you meditate in some way, shape, or form long enough, I would be very shocked if that little thought didn't shoot into your head during your practice. Like whether you're just being quiet and still, whether you're trying to manifest something, whether you're trying to bring abundance and gratitude or whatever into your life, at some point, these little thoughts of like, oh, well, my mom, or, oh, well, this incident, or like, but what if this happens, are going to keep shooting into your brain. And then you can figure out like, there's something here limiting going on. So let's figure out how we can get to the root of this and maybe change that perspective and go from a fear-based mindset or a fear-based process of reactive process of life to a more proactive and, for lack of a better word, love and happiness-based rationale. Empowerment. That's a much better word.
Yeah. I like it. Kind of nailed it. Exactly how. It's exactly what I was looking for.
That's why we're friends.
I know. If fear is a real thing and it's a hard pill for people to swallow. It's like if you do shit out of fear, like you're gonna
all the time.
You can potentially mess things up, and you really have to look at those parts of you that are doubting you or doubting life, and really sit with that and be with that and work through that, because that's really where the breakthroughs are going to happen for you.
And it's crazy because like you can do the right things for the wrong reasons. And it's like the outside world will look at you and be like, oh, this person is doing like so great. They're trying hard. They're eating right. They're da-da-da-da-da. And even though you're doing all the right things, if subconsciously or inside you have a story playing that's not really what you think is going on, that can cause chaos. Have you noticed that, Casey?
Yeah.
Probably.
Did my face just go somewhere? I just
so.
went somewhere. Is there a reason why I'm being so quiet right now? I mean, fear is real.
Yeah.
And then there's the shame around admitting fear. And it just, sometimes it looks like a huge mountain to scale. And you're like, how am I ever going to get up there? I think what I'm thinking about is fear prolongs the process of learning. Because so long as we're choosing out of fear or we are being motivated by fear, then we haven't learned that lesson. Right. So whatever lesson that fear was bringing has to show up in another way, in another choice further down the road. So, here we are adults and yeah, we're confronted just with these choices. And I kind of don't remember what question you asked me because I was like elsewhere when you, yeah, when you
I think
asked me.
you kind of answered because I was saying like, have you experienced that? And you're like, yeah. So yeah. But at the same time, like going off piggybacking what you said, fear is real. It's not bad. Sorry, it's not bad. And then at the same time, society tells us that it is. So like you're not supposed to tell the world that you're afraid of this or that you feel
Right.
this way. Like social
Perfect
media says,
example.
don't you ever show me
Don't
that.
show your vulnerability.
Exactly. So there's that stigma that needs to be broken on one end, and then there's another stigma of like fear isn't bad. It's a part of life. It's built into our body for a reason. Like if I see a cougar walking down the street, I want to get scared and run and be able to run really, really fast and get
Cougar,
away.
the animal, right?
Oh,
You're
Jay,
so good.
you're so bad.
I say good, she says bad. No, like a real animal. But if I saw a cougar, like a lady cougar, I don't know if I'd be afraid.
Be very afraid.
Be
I
very-
don't know.
Is she from Santa Clarita?
Oh my gosh,
Oh
this
yeah,
is too funny.
she'll eat
She's
you.
gonna eat your yeah.
Exactly. But
just
yeah, like
heard about
so,
this show.
so fear's not bad is all I wanted to say, but it should be understood and not relied on.
It's a normal part of every emotional experience.
Right.
It's real. I
Yep.
mean, there's fear and there's joy. There's fear and there's love. And some of us say that those are the only two things that we really experience, right? There's safety or not safety.
Yeah.
It pretty much boils down to that.
And things branch from there.
Safety or not safety. And again, this idea of like healing or trauma, those words they're like hot button words.
Yeah.
And they don't really need to be at all.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not like affronting somebody's parenting if we acknowledge that, yeah, their kids have trauma because nobody grows up without it.
No.
I'm not saying it has to be blunt force to the head, right? But like, I wasn't seen at such and such age, or I tried to get the attention of so and so, or, you know, just the habituations that you learn. It's not safe to share my feelings, or they don't, you know.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about when we talk about trauma. And so that's in the not safe category.
Right.
And then anything that's healing and wellness based and love based and not fear based is in the safe category.
Yep.
So I think that the work of wellness practitioners or healers or anybody doing this is, well, and all of humanity really,
Yeah.
is just moving in, is creating safety.
And something that I thought was cool is how you were talking about how like these things are in the non-safe category and safe. And I agree. I wanted to add that in certain circumstances, how you look at the not safe stuff can change it to a safe thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember, I forget if it was a professor of somebody who was very knowledgeable in the neurological science realm was saying between the ages of 3 and 7, and most people know this is where your subconscious is kind of the most susceptible to what's coming in verbally, visually, right? And when I was told that, instead of going to like things going on in my family, what I actually thought about was like being in daycares, being in school systems, or right, where these are authoritative figures that are saying things because that's just what's running in their mind, but not realizing that these things that go into your ears are now becoming an ingrained story of unsafety. Like getting a toy snatched from you and being like, you think everything is yours? You don't own everything. Now turns into I'm not enough, and I like, let's get that out.
Yeah.
I'm not enough, and like can turn into all these things. And then you come back down the line and all of a sudden you go, oh, well, if I look at this differently, this person was young, didn't know what they were doing. They were angry. They just snatched it out of my hand because they were trying to get the kids to calm down. And I just took it that way. And it really doesn't have to be an unsafe. And then all of a sudden my shoulder feels better. What?
Yeah.
Like that's the world I live in.
Is that what happened to your shoulder?
No, no, but like just example. It could have been a neck or a toe. Or my appendix feels better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my oldest daughter Mar is in school. She's 6, and so there's kids, and you try to protect your child as much as you can. But it's like, oh, there's these cliquey kids, and I just don't think you should be hanging around. Or there's even parents that you know the way they talk to their kids, or the way they talk to teachers, or the way they talk to their parents, or it's your kids are so receptive to these things, and they're holding on to these these thought patterns, and they're being ingrained into their subconscious,
Yep.
into their bodies. And it's like we have to be so conscious with everything we do and mindful. And um, it's not a hard thing to do. And a lot of people just don't know what they're doing.
No, it's just ignorance.
Yeah. And that's why I love this podcast, because we get to talk about these things
Yeah.
and educate people in a sense about like the effect that they have on themselves and on other people and their kids. And a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
Perfect example, when I first started working for the Human Garage, my posture was terrible. It was terrible. I did mixed martial arts for a few years. I was doing jujitsu. I was teaching yoga, and you
Right.
would think that in yoga you would have great posture,
Right.
open posture, but I was so rounded forward. My head was sticking forward, and part of it was subconsciously growing up. I used to see kids that were like muscular.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah, and so when I got older, when I got into fighting, I want to look
Like that.
I want to look buff.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna puff my chest up. I'm gonna
Totally.
stick my head forward so I look like a fighter. So
People
when
do
I
that,
walk
Casey.
around, people are like, "Oh, that guy looks tough. I don't want to mess with that guy." I just didn't know. I had no clue that
Right.
your ear was supposed to line up with like your hip and your knee and your
Right.
ankle. I had no clue.
Right.
And a lot of the same thing happens with like emotions and the way we talk to people. We just don't know that what effect that has on everything else.
Mm-mm.
And so getting people to start thinking about these things and not even learning lessons from us, but just to take a step back from
Yeah.
their normal day-to-day thinking and say, oh, maybe there's something else there,
Right.
is huge.
It's awareness.
It's awareness, for sure.
Can you believe that, Casey? Like guys also are like walking around trying to look like other guys, or it's like it's mostly in the women what's the women category of thinking is like their
Mhm.
body image and you know they have to wear this and that to look this way. Guys are like it too.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm 100% sure.
Right.
There just isn't quite as much media around it.
I know.
You
And
know,
it's the funniest thing. You see guys. I see a guy
I'm suddenly very
walking.
self-conscious about my posture. That was also something that my mother, and I also came to yoga, and my yoga when I was doing my teacher training, he was like, you jut your chin out.
Mhm.
Oh, you've seen that?
No.
And I'm
Never.
and then I realized it, and it's because I was like moving through the world too eager,
Mm.
right? I was like in the future. That's
Interesting.
what certain
Ah.
psychological philosophical approaches will say, right? They'll examine the posture and they'll say, oh, this suggests this and
Right.
this refers to that. So yeah, I was like too much in the world, too much out there,
Mm.
and not enough in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of it really starts with a physical body awareness.
Yeah.
And that's why I think movement and what you do is so huge, because we're starting to get people in tune with their own bodies. When I first got into body work, even though I had been teaching yoga for 4 years and I've been taking yoga for a total of 8 years, like my body awareness just wasn't quite there because I
Mhm.
wasn't educated on how my body moved through space.
Right.
I was educated on like what a good yoga posture looked like. I
Yep.
could take a picture of myself doing a cool yoga posture, but I didn't really understand the intricacies of what my body was doing
Yeah.
or what this muscle was doing or how this muscle was causing your body to move this way.
Mm.
Not saying that people need to start delving into
Yeah.
like anatomy in that sense, but understanding the basics of how your body is supposed to move when you're
Mhm.
walking, something
Mhm.
as simple as walking,
Totally.
is huge.
Yep.
Because walking is like our primary form of movement that we do throughout our entire lives. And if people just aren't walking correctly, then
Yep.
potentially other things just aren't moving correctly.
I would even go before walking, breathing.
Right.
Right? Like that's a movement. That's technically moving your entire trunk cavity is moving with
Mhm.
breath technically if we're doing it right.
Mhm.
So like you said, it's an awareness thing, and I thought it was a great point about not saying like everyone needs to go and become an anatomy nerd, but if I go out on Venice Boulevard and find a homeless man and say, "Show me where the steering wheel of your car is," he knows where it is.
Mm.
If I go to the same area and I'm like, "Show me where your hamstring is," that thing on the front of my shin,
Yeah.
like basics, like just certain basics, and part of that is the understanding of just how we move basically. And yoga, gymnastics, other movement practices are all like great steps. But sadly, there's usually not going to be one camp that gives you enough of the basics for general movement needs. So
Yeah.
like when I say general movement needs, like picking up things, getting in and out of cars, moving in your office, like yoga, gymnastics, these will all potentially help. But if you don't know how to access certain areas of your body, then I can't know for sure that everything is going to go the right way.
Right.
Like certain things have to be accounted for before we start saying like, oh, you can do this posture or you can do this movement. Like you must be good to go.
Mhm. Yeah, and the most common back injury is when someone's picking something up,
Yeah. Or turning.
and it's usually not even anything heavy, and
No.
people are like, "Oh, I just was picking up
Yep.
my backpack and my back went out," and then they think that that action was
Yeah.
what caused.
No.
Part of this is like the whole paradigm of how we grow and evolve. And it comes from how our parents or guardians view the world and how they reflect it back to us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when we don't grow up with, like a parent who's aware of movement modalities and aware of the importance of body integration and it's like, what's important? Well, stick your, put your shoulders back and
Right.
sit up straight
Right.
and, finish the food on your plate. And it's like those are habits that we then hear, that we
Yeah.
take in, and then we say, this is how life is meant to be lived.
Yep.
I'm being told and shown that this is how life is meant to be lived,
Yep.
or else I get in trouble.
Mhm.
So then it's
Yeah.
undoing all of that, which if we
Right.
can deliver more of this body awareness and more of this integration in this sense of everything, I don't know, spatial awareness, connection between people, that we're electromagnetic beings. If we can like show from a young age that that's something, then people will grow up with looking at the world differently and
Yeah.
understanding themselves differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, having greater awareness leads to having greater tenderness. And I
Mhm.
feel like that is the thing that is so important. It's like when we find tenderness, right? Call that word what you want. I don't care. Call me a sissy for using the word tenderness. We all need to be fucking tender.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I have a hard time being tender with this because I
That's
find it such,
ironic.
I know it's ironic, but it's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Because until we find the tenderness with ourselves, we can't give it to others.
Yep.
And, when we have parents who are really hard on themselves, then that's what is passed down to us. And
Right.
then we're confronted with the choice whether to, fight or flee. And,
Yeah.
and it goes on from there. The walking thing, it makes me think of, and this is the second time that I've thought of that even today, Feldenkrais.
Yeah.
Have you had
Feldenkrais
some
method. Yeah.
exposure to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which takes us back to how we started moving as infants when we were not imprinted with
Correct.
all of the things that then happened to us
Right.
throughout our lives.
So like neurodevelopmental sequencing and like how we're supposed to come into like the child stages to the toddler stages, right?
Right. And it's about optimization, right?
Yeah.
And I might have to revisit some Feldenkrais.
It's good stuff.
It's very good stuff.
Yeah.
And it teaches you also how to like walk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Anna that was talking about as we develop in a way, and then as you get older, we kind of go backwards?
Undeveloped.
That was me.
Yeah.
That
But it
you?
was during Anna's interview. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And you've seen that meme, right? It's like young baby, toddler, child, adult, and then like, scaling back, shrinking, curling.
Right.
And the same thing with organ functions.
Mhm.
Functions in the same exact way. Same thing with right? All the neural pathways, the patterning, our ability with language.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a loop. It's
Yeah.
just a cycle. It's just a cycle.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a death doula on soon because
A death duel.
Doula.
doula.
Oh, doula.
Yeah.
I was like, what's a death? Like a real death duel?
One of us is going down. No, but yes, a death doula,
Yeah.
right? We have birth doulas,
Yep.
which help us come into the world, help the mother and the family members. And then there's the death doula that is representing and supporting the family and the person dying on the other end. And it's just as vital. It's just as important because everything has that life death cycle.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How did we start talking about this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
There's a lot of good points you just made.
Thanks, friend.
Oh, I
I
remember
was
how we got
quiet
here.
for so long, and then I just, yeah.
You were talking about neurodevelopmental stuff, and that's how we got,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting too, because I have studied a lot of those things, and I definitely, you'll see in my practice that there is in the rehab to training evolution, there is kind of some neurodevelopmental sequencing that I sprinkle in. But then at the same time, like we talked about way earlier, everybody's going to have their own unique needs. And a good example of that is like for a neurodevelopmental scientist, you think that, okay, this is what's first, this is what's second, here's the timeline. If this timeline isn't being matched, there might be something going on. But then you go to a tribe in Africa where babies are put in little holes
Right.
until they're a year old, and then they just walk.
Right.
So if I had one of those kids come to me at the age of 16 or 20, or now I'm thinking to myself, well, this person didn't learn neurodevelopmentally sequenced properly. So like, are they completely wrong? And, is their body all messed up because of that lack of sequencing? No, they actually are totally fine. There isn't a lot of osteopathic issues out there or health issues. So I'm just trying to say that there's different ways to do everything. And it's really fascinating that for every dogma or perspective of like it's got to be done this way, I can almost guarantee you there's someone on the opposite side of the hill being like, no, there's another way.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, you just gotta explore
Yeah.
and try things out for yourself and just see what resonates and what works for you, really.
Right. Which
We
is why
adapt.
this is cool.
We
This-
know that we adapt.
Yeah.
We've been, we know
Always.
that we evolve, and
Mhm.
very quickly too.
Mhm.
Somebody was recently sharing a study with me about mice who were exposed to an electromagnetic shock along with the scent of rose. And within one generation, they didn't need the shock, but the offspring would smell the rose and then immediately freak
Yup.
out
Whoa.
within one generation.
That's crazy.
So we know that we adapt very quickly,
Yeah.
and that there is no one way.
Mhm.
And everybody's body's going to move differently.
Yeah.
Well, because we have so many different things going on. Our muscle density is different. The length of our muscles is different. Our bone density, what is our fascia like? How thick is it? Right?
And those
then,
are all just physiological potentials,
right.
let alone the emotional potentials or the environmental potentials or all that.
Hence why we have to go easy on ourselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is why this show's cool, though, because you guys are talking about all these things, and there's going to be somebody who's like, yeah, I've seen the chiros, and I've seen the body guys, and I've done the training, but what's this Ayurvedic thing that I just heard about? What is that? What's
Yeah.
this?
Who's Ryan Superman? We want to know who he is.
Let's go explore that. Let's stalk him on Instagram.
Have fun.
So, new website. Is that the best place where people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So Connection, spelled KINECTION, connectionla.com is my website, which is sorry if people are on there and it's not perfectly done yet. It's in the process of being turned into what I want it to be, but
It's evolving.
Thank you. But there is like a sign up for my newsletter. There's a sign up for a 15-minute free phone call with me. So that's a really easy place to get a hold of me. My Instagram is DRH. My full name is Donald Ryan Hodge. Sorry. So
Posing
DRH.connection.
doctor.
It's my initials, damn it. I have nothing to do about
Dr.
it.
H.
Right?
What's
DRH.connection is my Instagram. So those two places are the best. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Cool.
Ryan, pleasure having you on.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much for chatting and riffing and
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Groovy.
Anytime.
Super groovy.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Nice to meet you, Casey. No, Jay.
And thank you, listeners.
Thanks, everyone.